All righty, we are going to get started. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here this evening. My name is Paul. I'm going to be running the class tonight, and you are here because you want to attend the AI Fact versus Fiction class being put on by Santa Clara City Library. So before we get going, I have a few housekeeping things to mention. Number one is that I'm going to be talking about some third-party services this evening, but the library does not endorse these services. It's not affiliated with them, just using them as examples because they're commonly used popular tools that you will probably encounter as you go through and start using AI. It's going to be about a 35-minute program tonight, give or take a few minutes. We'll have time for questions and answers at the end of that. So if you have any questions you want to ask, you can do so at any point during the presentation. There is a Q&A button down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You're going to click on that. You can type your question into the Q&A and submit it, and I will answer as many as I can, as many as we have time for towards the end. If we run out of time and I didn't get to your question and you want to know more, you are always welcome to come down to Central Park Library to the Technology Center. That's going to be open anytime Central Park Library is open, and there will always be someone there who is knowledgeable about tech and can answer your questions about AI or just about anything else regarding technology. So please feel free to come. And lastly, this class is going to be recorded and posted to the library's YouTube channel. So if you missed something during the presentation, I'm going to send out an email either later this week or next week, and I'll have a link for the recording. So don't worry if can't catch quite everything. All right, and with that all said, let's jump right in. So this is the AI Fact versus Fiction class, and what we're going to cover today, if my slideshow will go along. And we're going to cover, first of all, what AI is. So when we talk about AI, what do we mean? Then we're going to get into the meat of the class, and that's going to be the fact versus fiction portion, where I'm going to dispel some, common myths that I hear and fears that people have around AI, and hopefully put your minds a little bit at ease about some things that can cause anxiety. We're going to just briefly dip into some ethical issues surrounding AI because that's a big part of this, and another thing that I hear a lot of people ask about. Then I'm going to go into a demo of an AI service that's going to be ChatGPT, which I'm sure most, if not all of you, have heard of. And then, like I said at the end, we will have a chance to do some questions and answers. So first off, we're going to talk about what is AI. And you can see on my slide, it says, what is generative AI? Because when we talk about AI nowadays, by and large, what is being referred to is generative AI. So that means a service, a program, a tool that uses AI to generate new content. And that can be based on prompts that you put in, typically. But AI in general can refer to a lot of things. You might remember back when they had the IBM's Deep Blue computer go on Jeopardy and play Jeopardy against humans. That's an example of AI, but not generative AI. So I'm going to largely and pretty much solely be talking about generative AI, but I might use just AI as shorthand for that. And generative AI, um, the ones that you're most familiar with are probably going to be text generators, and that is something that's called a large language model. And I'll talk more about what exactly that is in the next slide. But it's at its most basic, it's a program that's going to generate responses to your prompts in text. There are other kinds of generative AI that you might have heard of, some that can, create images or even, audio like songs or video of, moving people, moving things. And you can even, tailor your AI to work on very specific tasks like analyzing data, that you might find in a spreadsheet. You can also use it to, make a resume for yourself. And we had a great example of that in the AI tools for job seekers class that we did just a little while ago here at the library. And I will put a link for that in the chat later on in the class. So that's the basics of what AI is. And I've mentioned large language models are the predominant kind of generative AI that we see out and about. And a large language model is a computer program that responds to prompts that you write to it. So it's like a chat interface. So if you've ever used the texting app on your phone, if you've ever used an instant messaging interface, it's a lot like that. You're going to write a message and send it, and then you'll see a message come right back from the generative AI service. And it's not a person on the other end; it is just a program, but it's kind of mimicking the way a person would respond to you. And the way it does that is the people who program the large language model, they train it, so to speak, on a huge amount of data, and that's typically stuff that they're taking off of the internet. So websites like Wikipedia, social media, so sites like Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, basically anything that's publicly available that they think will be helpful for their program to have at its disposal when it's writing responses back to you is what it's trained on. Um, and you can also think of it as like a very souped up version of autocomplete, like you might have on your, when you're writing a message on your phone, you might see that it predicts what you're going to try to write next and gives you, ideas for what to do. Um, that's kind of what large language models are doing. They're looking at your prompt and using their programming to say, okay, what is a way that a person would respond to this? Um, and yeah, it's like kind of a very complicated guessing game. And the one thing to keep in mind as we go through is that it's just approximating or kind of mocking the way that a human would speak. It doesn't have actual human intelligence it doesn't use logic or reason. It's really just using probability to say, I think this word comes next, and then I think this word comes next, and so on. That's a simplified version, but that's pretty much what it is. Um, Okay, so now that we have a little bit of grounding in what AI is, we're going to talk about some of the fact versus fiction. And I'm going to start off with some fears that I've seen in media or that I've had people come to me and ask about. Um, and the number one that people are concerned about um, is that AI is going to become sentient and take over the world. We've all seen movies like Terminator or The Matrix or sci-fi stuff like that, where the machines at some point realized that they were being controlled by humans and they turn the tables and they take over. Um, and Yeah, and I think that, a lot of that fear maybe comes from seeing, media where that was the result of people messing around with AI. The reality of the situation is that generative AI, as it currently exists, is not even remotely close to developing sentience, to knowing what it is, or even to having, what we think of as real human intelligence. And it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case anytime soon. There are a lot of hurdles in the way. So um, you might hear the terms narrow AI and general AI. So when we talk about general AI, that is kind of the Terminator version of artificial intelligence, where it's a machine that poses as a human being and is completely 100% convincing. It's just as smart as a human. It can reason the way a human can. That is not what we have today. Some people, um, hypothesize that that could happen in the future. Currently, it's nowhere near being the case. There's a lot of speculation out there, but try not to get caught up in that. And that's a theme that I'm going to return to quite a bit as we go through. The next fear, and this is one that's a little bit more grounded in reality than AI becoming sentient, and the fear is that AI is going to take all of the human jobs. AI is going to be better at what people do than we are, and companies are going to see that that's cheaper than having a person and than paying a person, and they're just going to go to AI for all of their things. And this is, kind of a reasonable fear to have. Nobody wants to think that they're going to be replaced by AI and lose their livelihood. Um, and again, it's something that there's a lot of speculation about. Uh, you know, so the reality of the situation, despite all that speculation, despite fear mongering, what is happening currently is that AI, generative AI as we know it, is making work more efficient. It may cause big changes as it progresses, as advances are made, but nobody knows the future with certainty. And AI as it currently exists, and this is just my opinion, um, is best used as, something to help you make your work more efficient, not something that's going to replace you, replace your brain, replace your critical thinking and analysis abilities, but more so something that can be used to, jumpstart like a brainstorming process or streamline repetitive work, stuff like that. Um, and one other thing that I've heard AI compared to, and again, this is speculation, this is not happening presently. But back in the days of the Industrial Revolution, a lot of people were displaced by advances that were being made in technology. Mechanical things were taking over from handmade things, and the result was that uh, many jobs became outdated, but many more were created as a result of that as well. So you could see something like that happen, where even though some jobs cease to exist as we know them, new ones that we have no way of predicting come into existence. So there's no reason to have huge um, kind of doom and gloom about AI at this point. And again, anything that you hear people speculating about, you should meet with kind of a healthy skepticism. Don't take it as the gospel truth when someone says, AI is definitely going to do this, AI is definitely going to do that. I started with these two fears because they're things that I hear the most, I would say. Um, but we're going to see in just a second that AI has some shortcomings that both mean that these two things aren't going to happen immediately, and that make using it with your brain on, with critical thinking engaged, a definite must. So the next thing that I hear about a lot, and these are more in the on the level of myths than fears. But one myth is that AI gives perfect responses to your prompts. So you ask AI a question, it gives you a perfect answer. It knows exactly what it's talking about, and you don't have to think too hard about it. And that's another thing it's easy to assume because these generative AI services present themselves as being very, very credible and very authoritative. They seem to know what they're talking about, but we're going to see that that's not necessarily the case. So the reality of the situation is that while generative AI is very helpful, and a lot of the time it's spot on with its answers, it's also prone to number one, bias, and number two, hallucinations. So bias comes about because AI uses data harvested from us, from people. So it's subject to kind of the same things, the same biases that people have. So that can be cultural bias, political bias, um, bias when it comes to things like names, assumptions that it makes about different people, different professions. Um, it absorbs all of that from its training data. And the companies that make generative AI services do try to weed that out and make their services less prone to it and more helpful, but they are certainly not perfect at that. It's an ongoing process to try to make AI better, and it is far from perfect in the way of bias. And I'll give you one example quickly of that. So there are these image generating AIs that I alluded to earlier. So on one of them, if you ask that image generating AI, oh, where did my presentation go? If you ask that image generating AI to make you a picture of a nurse, 9 out of 10 times that nurse is going to be a woman. So kind of perpetuating a stereotype that we have about nurses. And likewise, if you ask it to make a picture of a doctor, that doctor is going to be a man 9 out of 10 times. So, not the case in reality, but based on its training data, maybe some outdated training data, that seems to be what it does. And then the other thing that AI is prone to is hallucinations, and this is basically a popular term for AI just giving you the wrong information. And that can come about in a few ways. It can give you incorrect information based on incorrect training data, certainly. Um, and it can cite sources that don't exist. So sometimes if you ask, for a source where it got its information from when you're chatting with an AI, it'll say, I got it from this website, and it could give you a completely made up website. And that's just an artifact of the way that these AIs are programmed. And the worst, in my opinion, hallucination is when it just completely makes stuff up out of whole cloth. It gives you an answer that sounds plausible, but um, it isn't even an incorrect answer. It's just a completely fabricated answer. And again, that's because of the way that they work. So they're not, um, logically thinking about responding to your question. They're just saying, okay, I think that this word comes after this word comes after this word, and that can cause it to give you completely, made up information. So, I want to reiterate that when you're using AI, you don't want to trust it 100%. Use it as a tool like any other tool and cross-reference. Look for other sources of information to corroborate what the AI is telling you, and keep your critical thinking going. Um, and yeah, the next myth that I hear about is that AI can do anything. So, we're all impressed with kind of the rapid advance of AI, and it can be very dazzling. But I talked a little bit about narrow versus general AI right now, and the tools that we have right now are what are popularly referred to as narrow AI. So that means they've been created for one or maybe a few specific uses that they are good at, but they are not able to do things besides that use. So, for example, an LLM, a large language model that generates text, it's great at giving you human sounding responses, dialogue or essays, poetry, things like that. But it is completely hopeless at doing math. If you try to give it an arithmetic problem, even a simple one, it's probably going to give you a wrong answer. And that's just because of again, the way that it works. It's not logicking things out. It doesn't have a calculator in it. It is simply a language generation tool. Um, and there are other examples, but just know that look at what the AI that you're using is supposed to be used for, and keep that in mind as you're using it. Okay, and then the last big one, and this kind of drives home a theme that I've been trying to really reiterate, is the myth is that everything you hear about AI is true, and this you know can honestly be applied to most of the internet, not just news about AI. But just with regard to AI, you should take any news that you hear about AI with, healthy skepticism. Just like, you don't have to 100% trust an answer you get from an AI service, you don't have to 100% trust news you hear about AI, because the reality is there's a lot of hype. AI is the popular buzzword of the day. You're probably seeing it in companies you wouldn't expect to have anything to do with AI, are saying that they're incorporating it into their service. And it's because companies want to sell you a product. So they're going to jump on whatever trend they think is going to help sell their products, which, is just capitalism. And they have a tendency to overpromise what their products can do. Um, and a recent example of that you may have seen in the news, there was a company called Deep AI that had a new LLM called DeepSeek, and they promised that it was going to give you much better results than any other AI that you've used before, like ChatGPT, and it was going to do it for cheaper, and it was going to do it more efficiently. And so that kind of sent a big wave into the AI community, because there was some panic about, if this is true, then all of these companies that are doing AI right now are obsolete, and this is the new one out there. But it turned out to be a lot of hot air. It turned out that DeepSeek exaggerated kind of what it was capable of, and the resources that it used. Um, and it turned out to not be quite as big a deal as it was made out to be at first. It was, the promises that it made were based on kind of questionable testing from within the company. Um, so but the next time you see something that looks to be, too good to be true, or unbelievable, um, you can, you know, consider it as such until proven otherwise. Uh, um, all right. So that's most of the AI fact versus fiction portion. I do want to touch briefly on some ethical questions around AI, and I'm going to try to present these as objectively as I can without coloring it by my opinion. These are questions that have been raised by lots of people who are smarter than me. But I just, feel that it would be good to consider as we're going through this AI topic. You can, contemplate this on your own, do more research, and make your own conclusions. So plagiarism is one thing that comes up a lot around AI. So students in school, and you may have heard about this in the news, might be using AI a little too liberally to complete their assignments, and that can, go as far as just typing a prompt for an essay that they have to write into ChatGPT, and then taking the response, copying and pasting, and presenting it as their own work. Um, and that's kind of a big deal. It could lead to all sorts of things. Um, and another thing there is that trying to detect that right now, at least, is very difficult. There are companies that market AI detection tools, but all the ones that I've ever heard of are very bad at actually doing that. They return a lot of false positives. So that could mean that students who don't use ChatGPT at all, who don't use AI at all for their assignments, can be accused of that. Um, and it means that students who do might get away with it. I've heard things as that I've heard that those detection tools can have as low as like a 50% um, actual guess rate of being correct, which is no better than flipping a coin. Um, and another thing about on the plagiarism topic is when you're using AI to help you create something, like say you're um, a poet, and you want some inspiration, and you kind of use AI as a brainstorming tool. At what point um, is your work still yours and original? And at what point is it something that's just made by the AI? And there's a big gray area there. I don't have an answer for that question, but something just to keep in mind. Um, Another topic that comes up a lot around AI is copyright, and um, I mentioned the training that AIs use, the training data is scraped from the internet, and in a lot of cases, that's from sites that have a reasonable expectation to that they should be paid for their services. So it's their intellectual property. So, for example, the New York Times has taken exception to OpenAI. That is, OpenAI is the company that created ChatGPT. The New York Times has actually sued OpenAI, saying that it was not legal for them, not ethical for them to take New York Times articles for free and plug them into the large language model to train it. That they should be compensated somehow. And again, not a question that I have the answer to. The lawsuit is pending, and that's something that you should feel free to look up on your own and see what side you fall on. Another thing to know about AI is that it is very electricity intensive. So what's powering these AI engines are GPUs, graphical processing units. A lot of those are made by the company NVIDIA, which is right here in Santa Clara. And those are just, you can think of them as very powerful computers that are good at processing a lot of tasks at once, which is what large language models have to do. So, you use thousands and thousands of these GPUs to power an LLM. And, as more and more people are using ChatGPT and other services like it, you need more and more of those GPUs. All of those are using kind of a lot of electricity. Um, and those thousands and thousands of GPUs are typically all housed in one large data center. And those data centers use a huge amount of electricity. I put this statistic up on my presentation that right now, just within the city of Santa Clara, that's within city limits, those data centers, and these are not just AI, but data centers in general account for more than half of our electricity use. So you can imagine that's quite a bit, and that's not taking into account outlying areas like out in like Livermore and around there, where there are even larger and more electricity intensive data centers. So you know, it's something that's ongoing, the greater power use that AI is causing. And then lastly, concerning the question of ethics is access to AI. So AI is in, the popular AI models are in the hands of a few big companies. I mentioned OpenAI. Google, of course, has their own AI tool, Gemini. Um, and there are a few others. There's Microsoft Copilot. There are others, but those are the big ones. And they're pretty concentrated there and also concentrated in just a few countries. So the question of, will there be equitable access to AI in the future, um, is another thing to think about. And again, I'm trying to present this absent of my own personal opinion, but I encourage everyone who has an interest in AI to do more research. And okay. The very last thing that we'll talk about before I go into my demo of ChatGPT is privacy. So something to know when you're using AI is that the prompts that you enter can be used to train future versions of AI models. So AI isn't actively learning and improving once it's released to the public. Once the LLM is out in the public, it is kind of what it is. It has its training data. But uh, companies are coming out with better versions of their models all the time. And one of the sources that they're using to improve that is the input that they're getting from people using the service. So just, know that as you use it, you probably don't want to enter any private personal data that you don't want getting out onto the internet. The way I like to think of it is if it's not something that you would, broadcast on like a social media page, it's not something that you probably want to put into ChatGPT necessarily or any other AI service. Um, and of course, you do have the ability to opt out of that, and that can reduce the functionality. But I'll show you exactly how you would go about doing that when using ChatGPT or something like it. And then, chatbots, most of them, the ones that are available for free, do have kind of guardrails on them. So they limit the kinds of things that they can say to prevent people from using them to do illegal or, unethical things as defined by the companies that created them. Okay, so without any further ado, we're going to hop right into a demo of ChatGPT. I'm going to take down my presentation here. And so this is the interface that you will see when you hop into ChatGPT. Let me see here. Okay. Um, you do have to make an account before you start using ChatGPT, but that's a pretty quick and easy process. It's not really different from, creating an account on another website like a social media site. You just need to have an email address that you can use to as your account name and make a password, and then you're pretty much good to go. So the first thing it presents you with is this big friendly "What can I help with?" Question, and then it has this text bar where you can type in your prompt. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, please introduce yourself and tell me about your features. Okay, and we're going to see that it creates text one letter at a time pretty rapidly. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to think about its answer before it gives it to you, but a lot of the time it just kind of comes out like that. So it's telling you a lot of the same stuff that I was just saying. So it has, natural flowing conversations. At least that's what it's trying to approximate. It's trained using general knowledge. It can help you to write essays, or maybe go even beyond just helping. It can write code. That's not something that I mentioned, but it's something that I know generative AI is being used a lot for, is um, to to help with coding for students or for professionals like engineers. It can create images. So ChatGPT is not just a large language model. It also has DALL-E, which is a text to image generator. And I'll show you how exactly that works in just a second. Um, it does say it can solve math problems. Jury's kind of still out on that, but they are really trying to improve its math ability. And then one newer feature of the latest model of ChatGPT is that it can remember information across sessions. So what that means is, well, here, let me show you what different sessions look like. So right now, what we're in is a session. So, I can continue to write messages within here. I can say, thank you, and it'll give me another prompt again, using the context of this conversation we're already having. If I wanted to stop that and start a new session, I'm going to come up here to the top left corner where this little symbol of a pencil and paper is. And when I mouse over it, it says new chat. I'm going to click on that, and it takes me right back to this initial message. And then you'll see that over in this left bar, under Today, it has ChatGPT Features Overview. If I click on that, it's going to take me right back to that first conversation. So it saves your conversations. And what this memory thing is telling you is that if you enable that feature, it's going to use the context from all of your different conversations to kind of inform its answers and try to, be better at telling you what you're looking for. So I'm going to go into a new conversation. And I'll just give you a couple more simple examples because we're getting close to Q&A time of the kinds of things ChatGPT can do. When I did this class before, one question that I got a lot was, can I use it to help me plan a vacation? And absolutely you can. So let's say you want to go to Alaska. You could tell it, I'm going to Alaska in the summer. What are some of the cool things I can do there? And it's going to tell me. It's going to break it up into categories. And this is a format you'll see ChatGPT use a lot when you ask it kind of broad questions like this, is it'll give you these kind of little lists divided up into different categories. So it tries to be helpful, not just in the answers it gives, but in the way it formats them. So they're easy to digest. So it gives me some very general stuff. If I tell it, I want to stay close to Anchorage, then it'll get a little more specific. It knows that I'm still talking about my Alaska vacation. And you can see here, you might have missed it, but it said searching the web. So it is using the current internet to kind of create its answers. It's not, older versions of ChatGPT were based on outdated information. That's no longer the case. Now it has up-to-date access to the internet. And so it gives me some information about stuff that's closer to Anchorage. And if I tell it I would like to do ADA accessible activities, then it can get even more specific. So you can just keep on going. You can, get more specific about dates that you would like to go and see what, things might be happening during those dates. You can ask about hotels and, general cost, anything that, might pertain to that vacation. You can just keep going and going with this one conversation. And then I'll do one more demonstration because I've got about 2 minutes left before I'm going to start answering your questions. And once again, if you have questions, go ahead and pop them into that Q&A button that's down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and I'll get to as many as I can. So the last thing I'm going to have it do is create an image. And you can see that there in this button there's a create image option. So I'm going to click on that. So now it knows that what I want is for it to create an image. And just for today, I'm going to say, make an impressionist style painting of the Eiffel Tower if it was made of cheddar cheese. So this is something that doesn't exist in real life. It's going to have to cobble it together from other images. And the way it does this, it's similar to the training of, oh, well, it might take a little bit. I wasn't expecting that, but it cobbles it together from, lots of images that it's been trained on. And there's a lot more to it than that, but I don't want to, dive into the nitty gritty. And I guess we'll have to let it think about that while I answer your questions, and we'll see if it comes up with something for us while we're still here. Okay. So I have your questions up now, and I'm going to answer as best I can. First question I see is, will we get the slides the recording for this presentation, yes, like I mentioned, it's going to go up on the YouTube channel, and I will email everybody who signed up for the class with a link to that recording. So that will include the slides. It'll include all of my talking over them. Next question I see, are AI tools able to detect fake information or news? So, like I said, no, not really. The people who train them, the programmers who create the LLMs, they are trying their best to, to make them accurate and to not, to spit out incorrect information. But thus far, they are imperfect at doing that. And so, like I mentioned, it is vital to take anything that you get out of an LLM with a grain of salt, and to keep your critical thinking engaged. All right. Another question. When ChatGPT first came out, it was only using data from 2022 and earlier. Has it been updated with more recent data? Yes. Like I mentioned, the newest version of ChatGPT. Oh, and our image is coming out there. The newest version of ChatGPT is up to date. It is able to browse the internet for up to date information. All right. Uh, Another question. AI is different from the Industrial Revolution because it's replacing quote unquote mind jobs, not just physical labor. Professions like plumbing or electrical work may be safer due to their unpredictable hands-on nature. So, how can those of us in knowledge-based or mental roles protect ourselves from being replaced or disrupted by AI? That is a great question. And you're spot on that the nature of the jobs who could potentially be displaced by AI are very different from those in the Industrial Revolution. Um, so this answer is just solely based on my anecdotal experience, but a lot of the people I know getting into programming related jobs, or who have been in engineering or computer science related jobs, are pivoting to embrace the AI revolution. They're um, learning more, and I think this is a good thing to do for any profession, is to always be learning, always stay up to date with what's going on in your field. And then, if you're the person who knows more about AI, who's good at prompt engineering, that's a buzzword that you might hear, and something that I encourage everybody to look up. Prompt engineering is a hot topic. So that just means, being able to use AI to its maximum potential, being able to engineer the best prompts to get the best results. Things like that. Embracing the technology is definitely one route you can go. Um, just diversifying your skill set, I think, is always a safe bet. And I would also encourage you to see what other people, your colleagues, in whatever profession you're in, are trying to do. Because I work in a library. My knowledge is mostly limited to that kind of work, that and technology. But fantastic question. All right. Someone asks, are the premium, that is the paid versions of AI, better? So for the most part, you will have access to more features. Um, for example, with ChatGPT, it's going to give you unlimited access to their top of the line model. So you see down here in the corner of the screen where it says upgrade plan, it says more access to the best models. I'm going to click on that so you can see a little bit more about what that means. So when you're using the free version, it does limit you to only a certain number of prompts, or a certain number of answers per day, and limited access to things that require more computing power, which is going to in turn cost the company more money. So once you upgrade to a Plus or a Pro account, that would get you basically unlimited access to those same features. And it also gives you previews to models that aren't available to the general public yet. So yes, I would say that you're going to get more if you're willing to pay for versions of these premium services, and that's kind of across the board with any AI service. Um, but good question. Can you describe any differences between ChatGPT and Google's Gemini? So I would say overall they are much more similar than they are different. And I'll just show you what this person is talking about. So Google has their own AI that is called Gemini. It's an LLM, just like ChatGPT is, and you can see the interface is very, very similar to to the one that you see when you start with ChatGPT. It gives you the same kind of you know um, options to jumpstart your whatever you're trying to do. It even has the same caveat. It says Gemini can make mistakes, so double check it. ChatGPT, if we go back to this down at the bottom, it says ChatGPT can make mistakes, check important info. So the differences are pretty minimal. The main difference is that it was created by different people using a different but similar training process. And so you'll probably find that using one or the other gets you maybe better responses in some regards and worse in others, or just slightly different responses. I wouldn't say that there is a hugely significant difference between the two, at least in my personal experience. Um, I don't believe that Gemini gives you free access to image generation, but that may have changed since the last time I used it. I don't use Gemini a whole lot. Okay. I said that ChatGPT uses current information, but if you look at the first response it gave about its features, it says it used data up to April 2023. Let's see here. My core knowledge is up to April 2023, but I can access real-time information if you ask me to look something up via the web tool. Okay, that's a great distinction to make, and thank you for pointing that out. Um, so its training data, yes, is still limited to that is the data that they used to initially create the model is limited to up to 2023, but it is able to access the web. So it kind of the algorithm uh, kind of tries to gauge whether it needs to go on the web based on your prompt to give you accurate information, and that may not always happen exactly the way you want it to. Um, so there is a distinction there that the training data is limited to a certain date until they update the model, but it does have access to the web as well. Um, so thank you for mentioning that. One person asks, is ChatGPT free or do we have to pay? So either option is available. You can certainly use it for free. My account that I have up here is completely free. It's just a little limited compared to the pay version. Can I input a question regarding probability and statistics of something you are researching? You can. As I mentioned, you might not get accurate results when asking it for something numbers based, like statistics and probability, because it is not the model is not um, meant to assist you with things like that. You're probably better off, using a statistical model or probability, a calculator than using something like ChatGPT to try to determine that. You can try to use it to say, what is a method that I could use to try to do some statistical analysis for a given set of data, but I would then take its response and try to do that on your own. And again, double check the answers that it's giving you. Don't just rely on what it says to be accurate. Um, which is another kind of well, I'll save the commentary. Uh, ChatGPT's response to my first question said it was up to date as April 2023. Can you verify? I think I covered that in my last response. So I'm going to keep going because I only have 1 minute left. Can AI give examples of law documents? Um, so the training data does have access to any um, cases that have been uploaded to the internet. So it is I know a tool that some legal professionals use to look up case law and try to make their arguments. But I've also heard and specific examples of it creating fake cases. Like I said, when it cites sources, sometimes it just makes them up. So it's not something that you want to rely on as a legal professional to give you accurate information. You want to go, to legal journals and to wherever you may have found that information in the past to verify that it's giving you the right answers. Can I give you tips on how to enter effective prompts? I am going to do that in a later class. I wish I had time right now. I do not. But that is a great idea for a future class to kind of make your use of a service like ChatGPT more efficient. So look out for that in the future. On the free version, does it do coding help? Yes. So you can ask it to code you a program, code me a program in Python. I'll just pick a random language that says, hello world. And you can see that the response it gives is slightly different. So it gives you the code inside its own little Python code window. You can feel free to play around with that. I'm running out of time, so that's about all I can show you. And last question, does the AI tool do translations? Yes. It is actually pretty good in my experience at giving you translations. The nice thing is it's a little better at doing context-based translation than an older school translation service. That is to say, it takes into account what your meaning might be and kind of idiomatic phrasing. So, from English to Spanish, a literal translation might lose something or not get across the meaning that you intend, versus a contextual one, like these LLMs are pretty good at doing, could be more accurate. But it's not going to replace a human translator for accuracy, anytime in the near future, as far as I know. But it is, decent from what I've seen. Okay, so that is about it for our class this evening. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Before you go, I just want to mention a couple of things. Number one is if you would like to be alerted to our classes in the future, you can go to our website. That's sclibrary.org. And well, it's not going to do it for me because I've come to our site before, but when you go to the site for the first time, you'll get a pop-up down in the corner that says, you can sign up for our emails. If you do that, you're going to get emails for all of the library events and programs that happen, including our technology classes. So if you want to stay up to date, please do sign up for our emails. And then the last thing is, on your way out, when you close the Zoom meeting, you are going to get a survey that'll pop up in a web browser, and that just has a few questions that are really helpful for us to figure out what we're doing right, what we could do better, and most importantly, what kinds of classes you would like to see in the future. Because we do try to do the things that people, people are asking for. So with that, I am going to close. Again, thanks everybody for coming tonight, and we will see you at our next class. Bye.